I'm Maxwell W. Garcia, and I'm gonna watch the One Piece live action series on Netflix.
I'm Monkey D. Luffy. And I'm gonna be king of the pirates.
Thus far, live action anime adaptations have not done so well. Whether that's Cowboy Bebop getting destroyed after just one season, or the Dragon Ball Evolution movie. And yet, I have high expectations for what this could be. To be clear, this isn't the classic fictional story that's one of the best fictional stories of all time. That's the ongoing manga that's been ongoing since like the late 1990s for over 20 years, and that's only about roughly 80% complete. I'm very excited to see how that finishes. This is something completely different. It's not a one-to-one adaptation of the manga and the anime. It's putting an American spin on what is traditionally a Japanese story. The question is this live action that's covering about 60 to 70 episodes of the anime going to capture the true One Piece themes of freedom and dreams and friendship and tragic backstories and found family? Is it going to cover all those topics in a way that tributes to the original and yet puts a spin with like Marvel type quips and American comedy? And I'm excited to see what's shown in front of me and how they change up the plot compared to the original manga. I'm very excited to get the joy from watching Luffy on screen played by Inaki Godoy. I think he is the perfect Luffy. Oda Sensei himself says so. And I think the rest of the main 5 cast are perfect. The gorgeous Emily Rudd is playing Nami. McKenna's playing Zoro. Jacob Gibson is playing Usopp without the nose. And Taz Skylar, who's using an American accent, which I think fits Sanji, and doesn't have the swirling eyebrows. And then I get to see a bunch of other characters in the live action, whether that's Kobe or Garp or Mihawk. And I can't forget about the good old Warlord Yonko breakout of Impel Down Buggy Ball. Buggy. Probably my biggest concern right now is not about the acting. I think the acting is going to go so well. It's not about the CGI. I think Luffy's and Smoker's and Buggy's CGI is going to go well. To me, my biggest concern is the whole Arlong fight. Is Arlong going to feel like a threat? Because in the trailer, to me, he doesn't really feel like a threat. Everything else I'm fully hyped on. And the reason why this show exists and got a $150 million budget, other than Netflix just trying to expand their library, is because, for example, my parents, they don't watch any animation at all, which includes zero anime. But they are going to give this a chance. They are going to tell me their thoughts on the One Piece story. And that's amazing. If people who aren't into One Piece get into One Piece because of this show, that's awesome. And I'm very excited to see if this answers my question, if you should watch this over the anime. It's actually condensing some of the story and picking up the pace of it, which could be a good thing. It's not always a bad thing. I did the calculation. It's condensing the story by about 3 to 4 times the anime episode amount in minutes. I'm going to watch it in the English dub so I can hear the original Luffy voice actor say Kaizoku Oni Oriwa Naru, or pick up like Mugiwara or Segoi or Kudasai or other Japanese words. Here's a vlog as I experience the One Piece live action for the first time.
That's good enough for me. Yeah, it's really something about acting. It's just obviously as an accent. And you promise to never steal again.
I promise.
I'm in a cringy Amazon Gear Forth hoodie to talk about the One Piece live action, how the One Piece live action is real, how it is one of the very select few anime adaptations into live action to actually be good. You could say that the One Piece live action is just decent, it's meh, it just barely passes because you don't like vibe with the actual story of One Piece. The One Piece story isn't for everyone. It can be a bit too goofy at times, but it could also be very serious and heart-grabbing. But anyways, the One Piece live action kept to the soul of One Piece. It kept to the beautiful motifs that are freedoms. And Luffy had a bunch of dialogue just here and there where he just hints that being the Pirate King is about being the freest person on Earth. Like, why wouldn't you want to be a pirate? And Iñaki Godai, you play Luffy great. It is kind of like jarring at times, especially when you're first watching the series, to see such a happy-go-lucky character in real life. But that is Luffy. Luffy is just happy for adventure. And I do have to bring up the fact that the One Piece live action dominated in Rotten Tomatoes. It's number 3 right now in the United States, 13 days after the release date. And you can set one of the One Piece live action characters as your Netflix profile image. And of course, I had to put Binky. Excuse me, I mean Buggy. So talking about the series itself, there's so many directions that you could go, and you could talk about this live action for hours and hours, but I do kind of want to make this short. I do want to say that the first episode is perfect pacing. If you just watch the first episode and that's all you watch of the live action, I would say that's okay, because the first episode just grabs what the One Piece world is so well, even though it's done in live action. Like, you have the little gritty moment with Alvida, like, killing someone on the boat and Kobe having to, like, mop up the mess after that. And then you just have Luffy stretching for the first time on Alvida's pirate ship. And you have Luffy genuinely being interested in what Kobe wants to do with his life, what his dream is, because Luffy holds dreams above anything else, really. And even in the first episode, there's foreshadowing for season 2, and you get to see a moment that is just said in One Piece actually be done in front of you, which is something that shows how dedicated the producers of the show are to the original material. And this whole thing is Broke Works, which we should see in season 2, and Crocodile if season 2 happens. I really hope it does. And Oda gave us the confirmation that season 2 is indeed happening. And to be honest, I was prepared for plot changes, but there were a lot more plot changes than I imagined. So for one example, there's a Garp Kobe storyline that literally happens in around episode 300 of the anime that happens right away in season 1 in One Piece, which, by the way, One Piece live action is adapting around 0 to 60 episodes of the anime. And my quick thoughts on the Garp storyline, I don't mind it at all.
But you don't know Garp, and I know Garp.
Yes, I'm very glad Garp was still very strong. He threw like the cannonballs at Luffy, and Luffy like bounced it away. And I kind of understood the whole Garp storyline, because Garp is testing Luffy, because Luffy's a pirate for the very first time, to make sure he's ready to go to the Grand Line, because Garp knows how hard-headed Luffy is. And that whole back and forth Navy versus pirate fight, the whole season 1, which is kind of like the underlying tension in the whole show, which is kind of something that you do in live action American shows more than anime. It comes to a very sweet ending in the first episode, where you get this contrast between Goal D. Roger laughing and Monkey D. Luffy laughing, and Garp laughing too. And all One Piece fans know the significance of laughing with the D initial for the Will of D, but it's just a subtle hint in the live action that there's importance between those two characters. And overall, as a One Piece fan, I don't think it was paced too fast. The battle scenes definitely felt shorter than in the anime or the manga, because they have to be. And I just think it was like the perfect plot pacing throughout the whole entire show, all 8 episodes, except for the Syrup Village arc. I felt like that should have been 1 episode. Maybe I was just like underwhelmed the whole Syrup Village mini arc, because I knew Kuro is not an intimidating villain. He just kind of seemed like a butler with, like, I don't know, kind of waiting for midnight for no good reason, when he could have just killed Kaya at the start and just killed everyone else if he wanted to, because yeah. And even my gripe with the worst mini arc being Syrup Village, that still was decent. It was still a good Usopp introduction. I don't mind Usopp kissing Kaya, which is not something that happens in the original work. And I even got emotional 2 separate times in the show, where little tears went down my face. And that was one with the Nami Luffy moment with the hat and Arlong Park. And also when the 5 crewmates put their foot or their feet on the barrel, and they each declare their dreams before they head to the Grand Line. And just like getting used to Luffy as a character took some getting used to, same thing with the dialogue, but once you get used to the setting, get used to their colorful hairs, the green hair for Zoro, the orange hair for Nami, everything kind of becomes normal, and I found myself actually laughing at the jokes. There's one part in Arlong Park where Zoro the whole time is like, you don't really name your action moves. You don't say like, Gum Gum Gatling, oh, Gum Gum Pistol. And all of a sudden Sanji names his move, and Zoro's like, oh, you're going to fit in well here. And it's just a little like Zoro Sanji back and forth. And I gotta say, with Sanji, he actually was my favorite character in the live action, which says a ton because I hate him. I don't hate him. I like all the Straw Hats in the anime and the manga, but he's actually one of my least liked Straw Hats in the original content written by Oda-san. I don't know if I could put into words why I like Sanji so much, but he just has the underlying riz and the swagger, and I just love his relationship with Zeph being a little eggplant. His backstory in the live action just was tugging on my heartstrings, and his character just so good. I think the British accent for Sanji was a beautiful choice by Taz Skylar. He played that character wonderfully. Really, all the Straw Hats did a great job. Makenyu for Zoro was definitely a little more edgy, deadpan, super serious, monotone guy. And Nami Red as Nami had to play a really difficult role because before Arlong Park, she doesn't really trust anybody. She's by herself, independent, and having to play that personality, but kind of doing it so that you're not found out to be like a switch villain. That's tough because then after Arlong Park, you get to become a little bit more open and a little bit more caring about the crew and become a mom to all the crewmates. And Usopp, I feel like he didn't get that much screen time, but there's this moment in the Baratie where Arlong comes in and he's like hiding under a table and he just like runs out, or he's like telling all the village people after the Arlong Park fight that he fought everyone by himself. And you know, those are good quality Usopp moments. Definitely shows that he's like the teenager of the group, him and Luffy. And Nami and Zoro are conveyed as a couple years older than everyone else, even though everyone's around the same age as like 17, 18, 19. And what I said at the beginning of this video is that my parents would never watch an anime, and that is completely true. I told them to watch the One Piece show, and I was like, you don't have to watch the full thing if you don't want to. And my parents watched the full thing, and I knew my dad was going to like it more than my mom, because I think my dad just really likes Jack Sparrow and the Pirates of the Caribbean, and this is sort of in the similar style. Like, Jack Sparrow is a goofy character, and so is Luffy. Different types of goofy, but anyways, nonetheless the same. And my parents loved the One Piece live action, and they said Luffy did it. And when you see it like that, Luffy didn't achieve King of the Pirates status, that he didn't receive Kaizoku Uni Oriwanaru, pero he did achieve a bounty, which is kind of set up as foreshadowing in the very first episode, and where he's like, where's my face, which is a joke that was in the trailer. So when I see those trailer jokes in the live action where like Zoro and Nami say like, not a crew, like I can't laugh because I already laughed at that in the trailer. And overall, I'm very glad Luffy did not walk in sandals, Sanji didn't have his twirling eyebrows, Usopp didn't have his big nose. All those things could easily be dropped for a live action adaptation, and I'm glad they did it. I do want to touch on the CGI for Buggy's powers and Luffy's powers and the general CGI of the One Piece live action world. It was done very well. Luffy's Gum Gum powers, it does look silly at times, but especially when he like stretches his face for the first time in episode 1. I'm a rubber man, I'm a rubber monster. It all looks great, and even the Gum Gum Gatling in the last episode is just well done. While watching the show, the CGI wasn't that noticeable. And for Buggy too, there's a bunch of times where Buggy's just his head and his body parts are all scattered about. And other than Buggy or Binky or whatever you want to call Buggy, I'm glad they kept that little gag and brought it to the live action. Buggy was a wonderful character. You see his callousness by chaining up the whole town and forcing them to watch a circus show, but then he just makes these super wacky jokes and does wacky things, and it's great. And another one of my top concerns alongside the CGI was Arlong. Was Arlong going to feel like an intimidating villain? And I think they did him justice for sure. For some reason in the trailer, you don't get like a sheer sense of his size. But while you're watching the show, you feel like, oh man, this guy is just way bigger than Luffy. It doesn't feel like he's like 3-4 feet bigger than Luffy, but I don't feel like he has to be. Because Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Nami, well, Nami's actually power scaled up, but Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, they're all power scaled way down compared to how powerful they are in the anime and the manga. And I think that's okay. You could just power scale everything down in the One Piece world. They didn't actually make Mihawk and Garp as strong as they're supposed to be, which was good to see. You don't want to power scale everything down to the point where everyone's basically the same. But Luffy actually had to fight alongside Zoro and Nami and Sanji and Usopp in a couple fights to defeat all the big villains. He didn't really fight them on his own. And that's okay. I don't mind the power scaling down at all. It works for the live action. And for Arlong, they definitely pounded at the theme of fisherman racism, and they did a good job at it. You get some insights here and there, how fishmen are used as like slave labor for the human population, how they're not on equal footing, or how there was really bad racism in the past, and it's getting better, but it's not quite where it should be. And Arlong is just kind of the whole picture or image for the fishmen of the racism that they've dealt with in the past. And obviously Arlong's like tyrannical, and he takes over villages nearby and demands insane amount of taxes to be paid towards him. And overall, the characters were handled pretty well. I feel like Captain Morgan had a very unsatisfying like tie-in to the show. It felt like all other villains or characters, like they added Buggy and Arlong throughout the show. Like they sprinkled them way more into the plot than they actually are involved in the plot in the actual anime and manga. And that's okay. I love seeing Arlong and Buggy way more than I deserve. But Captain Morgan, Axe-Hand Morgan, if I had to like nitpick my biggest problem with the show, it's actually probably his character and just like his ending, because in the manga, Luffy like topples over like the statue that was on the roof and overthrows Morgan. But in this one, Morgan is just still there, I guess. I also definitely have to say I love all the unique title sequences of like the One Piece, whether it was like Usopp themed or Arlong themed or etc. Whoever the character that was getting like the focus on in the episode. I loved all the different title sequences, and I for sure loved all the bounty introductions. Those were awesome. And definitely shout out to all the world building, whether that was the warlords or Jinbei getting mentioned. And yeah, I'm a little nervous for season 2 if it gets approved, because what are you going to do about Chopper? There was a Captain Smoker foreshadowing at the end of season 1, and just like how Garp was kind of like the underlying marine chasing person in season 1, I think Smoker's going to be that in season 2. I think Logetown is going to be an island in the Grand Line, the first one that they approach in the Grand Line. And I think that's okay. And the whole purpose of this live action is that this isn't just supposed to be the end-all be-all with the One Piece story. This could actually introduce a lot of people to the One Piece story. I had one of my friends who now is actually interested in reading the One Piece manga and wasn't before watching this live action. That's amazing. It's the whole flywheel. As you get more people to watch the live action for the first time, their first introduction to One Piece, then they start checking out the manga. Then after the manga, they they watch some anime fight episodes and fight scenes and different scenes in the anime in general. And then they come back for season 2 of the One Piece live action, and that's like the flywheel that you want to build. Yeah, I think the One Piece live action perfectly streamlined the plot. They simplified it in certain parts and kind of made all the character motivations just way more signified and just way more easier to outline. And one evidence of that is like the definite need of a map in the first episode. Like that is not really stated in like the manga or the anime, where Luffy's like, I need a map, I need a map. But in the first episode, it's like, I need a map, and then that's how they get to Morgan, and that's the whole motivation for Luffy to get inside the base, is for the darn map. Unless in the original work made by Oda Sensei, Luffy is actually trying to get a map, but I don't remember him trying to get a map. But yes, I would totally love to see one of my favorite characters, Crocodile, in the live action. Yes, please. And let me tell you, why was Zeph so good in the live action? And Shanks did his job too. You definitely got to see like more of Shanks' character, like all the subtleties of his characteristics. Way more than you get to see in the anime and the manga, to be honest. I mean, now we're starting to see Shanks a little more, especially with the divine departure and how he treated that whole situation. But yeah, you get to see a little bit on Shanks' character. And the whole Mihawk Zoro action was pretty good. It's slightly cringy, Zoro like declaring that I'm never gonna lose again. And yeah, but I love how in the live action they like clearly state Zoro is the right hand man to Luffy, and that's like heavily implied in the original work, but it's never directly stated. And I feel like it's something that should be stated because of how much Zoro means as a grounding to Luffy. So I'll gum bazooka out of here, and I'm Maxwell W. Garcia, and I'm waiting for season 2 of the One Piece live action on Netflix.